How we doing this week, Dan?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you guys?
We're doing better after last week's performance. I'm curious what we were discussing just now. Mac, I know you've been pretty firm in your belief. We played a clip from you earlier this week that Mac can anticipate and he doesn't stink and all these things. Do you think they found something with their offense last week, personnel-wise? You know, Bourne's been playing a lot more. Pop Douglas saw an elevation in snaps. Less Juju, less Devontae Parker. Do you think they found something last week, or was that just a one-off in the NFL, which we see all the time?
I mean, it's definitely something that, listen, it was better than it certainly has been over the past month. So found something, you got to do it again to sit there and say, hey, this has got to be our primary receiving core, but it's the best. The pass game has looked really probably since the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season, unquestionably. So, I think with the tight ends, Bourne I've always thought was a good player. Asking him to be a number one is not fair. I don't know a ton about Douglas. I've heard a lot of great things, and I know there was some moments in preseason and early on in watching him versus man coverage last week. Now Buffalo's secondary has, because of some of the injuries, has been beat up, but I definitely sit there and go, all the things that people said Mac Jones wasn't and or couldn't do, he certainly did last week. And a big part of that is, okay, I have guys that I trust. I have guys that I know where are going to be. I have guys that I believe are going to go do something with it. And so I can play a little bit more anticipation-based and ball placement-based and throw guys to open spots. And then guys made some plays, certainly nothing down the field, but, Douglas made some big plays over the middle of the field. Obviously, the tight ends did as well. So I hope that they found something for them. And also, the truth is they were just way more efficient on offense. It was, okay, if we wanted to run the ball on first down, they ran it and got 3 or 4 yards. And if they wanted to run it on second, they got the 3rd and 2. And so they were way more complementary and balanced and efficient on offense than they had been for a month.
Dan, Mac Jones had the quickest time to throw in the entire league in Week 7 at just under 2.2 seconds. Do you think that stat is more reflective of Mac, the offensive design, or how the offensive line played?
Yeah, so it's all three, and that stat is always so subjective and game-by-game based. If you're going to play against the San Francisco 49ers and you have an average offensive line, you better be throwing the ball quickly. If you go to play against, how the Los Angeles Chargers look right now, you don't have to throw the ball that quickly. So that stat is always one where you sit there and go, did the opponent necessitate how you decided to play offensively?
Did the Bills?
They blocked better. The Bills are very, I don't want to say simple, but the Bills defensively have always been zone-based, and they're tremendous at it, but only really when Milano's in there, and obviously Ed Oliver in there. So they get the pass rush with zone eyes or play man and with Tre'Davious. So their defense is weakened without Ed Oliver, Tre'Davious White, and Matt Milano in there. So that was a little bit of, okay, we got the ball out when they played zone quickly because the middle of the field was a little bit more open. Man coverage, we separated a little bit quicker. And when you have man, quarterbacks usually throw the ball quicker just because you know who you're going to more often than not before you get the ball. So it was the style of play, but that's who they want to be, though. Like that's who that offense wants to be. That's who Mac Jones is as a player. I remember coming out of school, I said Mac knows who he is and who he isn't. That's one of his strengths, and that he's a get it out quick point guard ball distributor. That's when he's at his best.
So if that's the Patriots at their best, is that enough to be more than sort of what it looks like they are this year?
Again, I don't want to make – last week was a very good sign that capable. Yes, we can. Now, you're going to play a different defense this weekend, a little bit more talented. I don't know if the corners are going to play for Miami, but I think that if you sit there and go, all right, there was way more play action that they used this past week. Those two receivers that you guys mentioned did things in their pass game. No stupid throws, no, kind of like panic decisions with the ball. It came out on time, and they're efficient. Like if they can play to that style efficiency-wise, then they're capable. Yes, I don't think we're sitting here talking about a top 10, top 12 offense in the NFL, but they're capable. And that's significantly more than they were for those 4 weeks.
What'd you make of, and we're talking to Dan Orlovsky of ESPN. He makes his weekly appearance here on Jones and Mego with Arcan on WEEI. What'd you make of the news that Bill Belichick has been extended, has a new deal with the Patriots, a lucrative new multi-year deal? What'd you make of that?
Yeah, I guess I was a little bit surprised that it hadn't come out before. I'll be honest with you guys. I don't know if Schefter has reported on it, and maybe he has. I just kind of rely on. I try not to get into much unless it's coming from Shefty, just because that's the guy that I personally know. When he says something, or it's happening, or happened.
It's a teammate.
I guess
there.
I was surprised. Yeah, I guess I was surprised that it didn't come out sooner. It's obviously because of the way the season has gone, that's become a bigger question of what's the future for Coach Belichick, But I guess I was surprised it took that long to come out, if it's accurate.
Well, so we never really get much information, Schefter or anybody else. I think it was reported locally by Tom Curran. The last time we really had any info on his deal was Spygate in 2008. So we don't normally, Schefter or anybody else don't normally get a lot of information on this. Yeah,
and Tom's a stud. Like, Tom is obviously as dialed in as anybody around there. So I would imagine if it was coming from Tom, it's probably pretty accurate. So, yeah, I think it just surprised me that it took till mid-October for that to be reported, and even more so that because the noise has become so loud because of the performance of the team, you sit there and go, how hasn't that become more public sooner?
There was a point, and he talked about it today in his own personal relationship with the player, but there was a point in the game where Mac looked like he barked at Demario Pup Douglas a little bit, maybe for not being where he was supposed to be in the route, and it was when the ball kind of slipped from Mac's hand, he hesitated on a throw and it dropped down,
right.
Got a little lucky there. But I'm wondering, do you as a quarterback feel like that's something that is fair to judge from the outside, the way that a quarterback communicates with his receivers, particularly when they screw up on the field and maybe screw up the play?
Yeah. So I'd say this, just directly to Mac's performance last week. It was better. I still don't like Mac's feet. I text Mac that almost every week. Like, your feet still, like, he's got to get better at that. Even the game-winning touchdown, he's fallen away. So directly to the performance, I still believe Mac Jones. But that would be the one thing that just because you win, you can't avoid looking at. In relation to the question, playing quarterback in the NFL is not fair. There's nothing about it that's fair. There's only 32 people on the planet that get to do it. Playing quarterback in New England after Tom Brady certainly isn't either. So, when you're always, and I think Mac is realizing this maybe just a little bit more, is like, you're always going to be judged, right, wrong, or indifferent. And everyone is always going to have an opinion. The only one that matters is the people in your locker room and the people in your building, or matters the most. I've been around guys that got into it with receivers. It's a highly emotional, highly alpha male business in sports. I think you try to be as non-publicly berating and belittling as possible, while also being incredibly intense and demanding absolutely everything and the very best from your guys. And as long as you're a good teammate and you're a great leader, your guys usually, more often than not, are going to buy into it. So that a lot of those situations are earned over the course of days and weeks, months, and years of relationship and work.
What, without giving up any nuclear secrets, what's Mac like on text? Is he receptive to the feedback?
Yeah, Mac's I've always had a good relationship with Mac. Had the opportunity. I was obviously a big fan of his coming out of school. Had the opportunity to see him a couple times this past off season. He's really receptive. My experience with him has always been like, this dude really wants to be a really good player, and he wants to work at the things that he thinks he needs to work at, or maybe someone else thinks he needs to work at. So he's always been really receptive.
Dan, when the Patriots were 1-5 before that second win, there was a lot of talk about them potentially tanking. There's still some talk about that. You were on that 2011 Colts team, and so I wonder if you have some sort of perspective inside the locker room, inside the organization of a team, which, first of all, I don't know if you characterize what you guys did that year as tanking, but a lot of other people have. What sort of is that locker room like? What's that setting like?
Yeah, no one in the locker room or the coaching staff will ever tank. They're not wired to do it. People in the front office can kind of have a plan and/or support it, but the people that are doing the daily work and the competitors, it's just impossible. Those players, I mean, how many guys are in New England are actually going to be next year? You know the turnover that happens in the NFL for a ton of teams. So players never tank. When I was in the locker room, we obviously were aware as the season went on of, kind of the conversation, and there was question marks about Peyton, and there was the whole suck for luck campaign,
right.
But none of us were thinking about losing, to try to secure a draft pick. Actually, it was the opposite. And I'll be honest with you, I remember Mr. Irsay not wanting it because he didn't want Ofer attached to the Indianapolis Colts. So it was never something that became any part of the locker room conversation.
Well, I also remember that year you carved up the Patriots and cost me some money, Dan. So thanks for that.
Yeah. I did part of my take with the guys the other day, and they told me about some of the spreads that I had secured for some people's pockets. So I'm sorry I costed you money, but
yeah, good for them.
Like I might have made some other people money.
6-1, I believe.
I was just going to say, our producer, that's Ryan Garvin. He relayed those numbers before. 6-1 against the spread. That's good,
impressive.
Dan. That is good.
Not bad.
Yeah. It's that's what I people think my legacy is running out of the end zone, and I actually think it's being so good against the spread.
You know what? That is a nice sub headline.
And peeing
there.
in pools. Too,
yeah, well, that's true. Right. He is Dan Orlovsky of ESPN. We'll talk to you next week, Dan. Thanks for taking the time.
Great, guys. Thanks.